Primordial Radio.
It is Primordial Radio, and for the month of April, we have a brand new guest on the Radio Residency, and I am delighted to say hello to Sonny from the band Payable on Death. You may know them as well as P.O.D. Sonny, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, brother?
I am great. Great to have you here as well. You guys have got a brand new album coming out next month, Veritas, which we're all very excited about. We're loving the singles. And before we get chatting, let's play one of those singles. It is Drop featuring Randy Blythe. So that was P.O.D. with Drop featuring Randy Blythe. I've got Sonny here from the band. Tell us a little bit about that track. How was it in the studio? How was it recording with Randy?
Well, you know, with today's modern technology, we don't all have to be in the studio now. So it was one of those songs where we had finished it, and then Randy came to mind, and I hit up Randy and I said, hey, we have a song in mind for you. Would you want to get down on it? And he said, send it to me. And we know that Randy he's into a lot different or more music, I should say, than just metal. So it was kind of hit or miss whether he'd be down to get on it or not. And we sent it to him, and then he just texted me right back and said, dude, I'm in. So, with today's recording technology, everybody has the capabilities of, recording their vocals. And so he sent it over. We threw it up, and it's what it is. It's amazing.
It is such a great track. And it sounds like on the new album, you're going for, quite a straight, heavy approach. There isn't, as much sort of blending in other genres. This feels like pure, full-on metal.
Yep. I can't say that we actually intentionally went that way. I think it was just the process of recording. The way we recorded is just going back and forth to LA and kind of doing song by song. And I think it just kind of fit the mood. But you said it right. It's not all those different elements of P.O.D. It's just more kind of rocking straight through, with splashes of familiar P.O.D. But it is rocking.
And obviously, you guys have been going since 1990. Was it 1992?
Yeah.
Yes, that's 31 years now, and the process of recording must have changed so much in that time. Well, we all know it has.
Yeah,
how much do you enjoy that new modern method? Of sort of it's all digital. You can get people guesting, but they're not coming to the studio. Obviously, it's a different way of playing as well. Do you prefer it?
I wouldn't say prefer, but like everything with technology, you kind of lose a lot of the human side to it. You lose the interaction and the bonding. Before, recording and writing was a process that you'd have to set out months of your life because it took time. It took a while. You went and lived up in LA or wherever you're recording for that season, and you kind of just really threw your whole self into the process. Nowadays, there's guys that they don't even live in the same cities anymore. They don't even sit in a room and write. They just send over guitar riffs, drums, vocals, and then another guy just puts it all together on his computer, and then you have records, So it loses a lot of that old school feel to it. And so we try not to get too deep into that because we're just old school. That's what it is. But yeah. I mean, I appreciate technology, but some of these things, when it comes to art, it's a little questionable,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, on the flip side, there's always the story, there's that famous story of Eagles when they were recording and none of them could be in the same room as each other because they hated each other and they were pushing tapes across the whole of the US. There is that. It is a little easier at times.
Yeah, but at least it was a studio. It wasn't like, sending over MP3s on your computer. Nowadays, these bands are recording full records out of their bathroom. You know what I mean? So it's just... Yeah. I at least I wish that every kind of new band can travel back some years and kind of experience that whole just that whole studio vibe and doing things a certain way,
Definitely, and it keeps the studios going as well because obviously
that's right.
Music. That is important. Right, we're going to move on though now to a track from, I think it's fair to say, one of your contemporaries, and it is the band Korn and Got the Life. Now, obviously, this is like a defining song from, basically a defining song from the genre of nu metal. You guys have done a couple of those as well, but why did you pick this one in particular?
I mean, as most of these songs, a lot of them is just good memories for me. I remember coming up in '92 and I wasn't familiar with Korn, but I do remember seeing flyers, Korn, with the backwards R, and it was just like, okay, I got to check these guys out one day because there was a buzz about them, you know. But then once they blew up, then it was over. And when this record came out, Korn is the first band that took us overseas, and that was in 2000. And so just the experience that we had watching them play every night, it was a whole different level. We had come from the underground, you know, just those small stages, and then all of a sudden now here's Korn with this huge production, and just it was just a whole different world, you know. So I'll never forget that time.
Let's have a listen now. This is Korn with Got the Life. So that was 311 with Down here on the Radio Residency. My name is Adam, but you're not here for me. You're here for Sonny from P.O.D. Tell us a little bit about that one, because I'm going to say that I am familiar with probably 90% of your playlist. That is one that I'm not so familiar with.
So funny you say that, because here in the States, it's actually 311. So as soon as you said that, I knew. But dude, 311 has been around as long as P.O.D. and Korn, and I'm very surprised to know that they haven't crossed over and done as well over in the UK and Europe. But now I seen on the festival flyers and stuff their name. Usually in the States, they're headliners. You know what I mean? They're just as big as Korn here in the state. But it's interesting how, you know, bands are received. And I think, you know, kind of like us, we hit our niches, but there is, with 311, there is a lot of reggae influence. There is a lot of hip hop influence. And so very similar. They're a little bit more, you know, on the poppier alternative side. They do get heavy though. They are grooving. But it's interesting to see what, you know, from Europe to South America to Asia, what their tastes are. You know what I mean? Because they're not just metal. When I think of Korn, I think, yeah, they're metal, they're heavy. People know what they like. 311 has a lot of different spices, just like P.O.D. So sometimes it's not everybody's taste, but here in the States they do well, and that's just I just remember 311 blowing up on MTV, and that song. You hear the elements all in there, very similar to P.O.D.
And, you know, it's interesting, actually, because you were saying about when you went over with Korn, doing bigger gigs, you know, and it was your first time outside of the US, and you were already, you know, you were doing big gigs with Korn and everything. I think a lot of the bands from the US, because the US is huge, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not from the US and I might not know, but it seems like it's huge, and you can do, you know, you could tour around the US for years and years and years and get quite big. And I think there's a lot of bands that have, but then the UK is tiny. And when you end up coming over and you maybe aren't as well known, you can go from doing huge, you know, decent sized gigs in the US to really tiny little venues in the UK, which obviously doesn't pay as much, obviously isn't as exciting or gratifying, I guess. It's out from the sounds of it, you guys that kind of did it, you know, didn't have to do that. Do you think that might be something that would have distracted a band like 311?
It just depends, man, because a lot of times too, it's not that no one wants to go overseas, but there is a cost to that, you know. And even for us, if we tour certain countries, sometimes you just count the cost and say, we're not going to make money, but it's not about money. We just want to be in these countries. We're grateful that, you know, they actually want to come to our shows, you know. But I remember going to the UK and playing the you guys say the garage, the garage. And we love intimate hardcore shows like that. You know what I mean? So we've played every size venue, but obviously with Korn was on a whole different level. But you're right, that we're going back to England now, and we're supporting Skindred, who's playing Wembley. You know what I mean? When we first went over and did our first headline tour in Europe and the UK, you know, we brought out Skindred, and they've just grown so much. I mean, obviously they've been around long enough time, but I see it all the time. A band that's a no-namer, and because they have a hit single, all of a sudden they've never even played, and then they're playing a decent sized venue. So it just depends on label and politics and really what the people kind of are into. But 311, you know, they like I said, you'd be blown away how big they are here in the States.
Yeah. And just to check, would you say Blink 182 or Blink 182?
Blink 182.
Okay. That's interesting. Just seeing if it was the 311, 311, you know, if there's like a European difference. But no, we'd say the same, so that's fine. Up next, you've gone for Alien Ant Farm and Attitude. Tell us a little bit about this track.
Alien Ant Farm came out around the same time we were. We were kind of one of those MTV TRL babies, you know, that were trying to boot off all the pop and boy band acts. You know, you had your Papa Roach, Alien Ant Farm, us, Limp Bizkit, Korn. There was just a certain genre of bands, and we were battling, the TRL local bands or local groups. But we love those guys. We've been doing this long enough where we've become family with so many of these bands. We've gone out many a times together, and I think like us, once you have that kind of mainstream success, a lot of times sometimes they just see you as like the single, and obviously they did a cover, so they remember Alien Ant Farm as their cover, but they're such an intricate band. They're talented musicians all the way from vocals to everything. And this is just one of those songs off of that record that it's probably my favorite Alien Ant Farm song, just because of the dynamic, the melodies, the hook. They're a great band. I love those guys.
Let's have a listen now. This is Alien Ant Farm with Attitude. That was Alien Ant Farm with Attitude. We're going to play something now from Fire from the Gods with Excuse Me. But before we do that, I actually wanted to ask you a question, because when you were talking about before, all of you, Alien Ant Farm, Limp Bizkit, that sort of time when you guys were all coming out and you were on MTV. It was sort of early 90s, which is interesting for me because you're saying you guys were a family. In the UK, we had Oasis and Blur, who sort of coming out at a similar time, maybe a tiny bit earlier, and they drummed up this like horrible rivalry. And I don't know, was there ever anything like that happening in the US at the time?
No, I think those are just Hollywood antics. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know whatever. I don't know the severity of it, but when you have rock stars trying to be rock stars, that's going to happen. I think for us, what was cool about our genres like the Korns and the Limp Bizkit is that we really are just lifestyle guys. You know what I mean? We really are just coming up from our streets and our neighborhood, and the music that we make, it's not. I mean, I guess I know that there's an entertainment side to it, but a lot of it is just. I think a lot of us thought, man, we're never gonna leave our neighborhood. We're never gonna, this music is just for us. It's homegrown. So when it actually did hit, at least for me, it was like, man, I thought I'd never leave San Diego. So to get the opportunity to play our music around the world, it's like, it's all love and appreciation, and I'm fans of all those bands.
I mean, there's much worse places in the world to be than San Diego.
Yeah. I'm not complaining.
We do digress. Tell us a little bit about the band Fire from the Gods.
Fire from the Gods, I mean, I wouldn't say they're a new band, but they are a newer band. And we love their dynamic. We met those boys a long time ago. And same thing with us, they have AJ as the singer, and I believe he has UK roots as well, you know what I mean? But they're hailing out of Texas, and they have that Seven Dust kind of feel. They have the groove, they have the soul. Just another band from the streets that's real. I like bands that are passionate about their music and have something to say, and those are my boys. I love those guys.
Let's listen now. Fire from the Gods with Excuse Me. That was At the Drive-In with One Armed Scissor. Do you know what? I can't remember the last time I listened to At the Drive-In. It's one of those bands that kind of sadly, and I'm discovering more and more of them now, and it's one of the things I'm not huge on. I love, I don't know, I'm on the fence about things like Spotify. I use it, I like it, I don't necessarily know what I think about it long term, but it's one of those things that well, what do you think as a band? Because I mean, you've kind of been through it all, record labels and huge hits. Yeah. And to be fair, your hits have translated well on Spotify. I think, what was it, Youth of the Nation, which we're going to be playing next. That's up to 385 million streams or something. But
yeah,
would you rather be in a, if you had the choice now, if you were starting again, would you rather start again in, say, 1992 or in 2024?
Well, I'm always gonna be old school. You know what I mean? I'm grateful that there's platforms like that showcase your music. My only fight from the beginning. Again, I'm not like a Spotify user. I don't even know how to navigate through that stuff. I just know that it exists. My kids use it. That's how people listen to music, and that's modern technology. The only problem I have with that is that the bands like myself are not getting paid off it. It makes no sense that you played Youth of the Nation 300 something million times and we should be rich, because the advertisement companies and all the companies and corporations that you're pushing, they're making all the money. So my hope, and this will be huge news worldwide, is one day when they finally take it to court and pay the artists what they're due, it's going to be headline news. because nobody knows what's going on behind the scenes. But you can listen to P.O.D. over 300 million times, and then the artists not get paid. It makes no sense.
I mean, it's just not it. It's awful, really. I don't know what it's like as well. You know, we don't get many all of the record stores are closing down. It's quite hard sometimes to get hold of CDs and things like that. And it's one of those things that you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. I get very angry. I'm a big football, or I guess soccer fan. You know, when you see Spotify sponsoring clubs like Barcelona, and you see, you know, they're on the front of these shirts in $billion deals and stuff,
Billions,
and you're thinking, come on, like where
No.
are you getting that money from? It's a very difficult situation, which I hope they solve. And I know, you know, it kind of seems like there's a bit of a fight sometimes between Apple suddenly are going to offer the artist a half a cent more, and so a Tidal.
I think the listener, because they're not in the know, they think that they are. You know what I mean? Like they're enjoying the music and they're like, man, I'm supporting my band. You know, at the end of the year, they get the little notification that you've listened to P.O.D. a million times, and they're like, yeah, I love this band, and they have no idea what's going on. But how are you going to go? It's the same thing, kind of like with YouTube. If someone's looking up Youth of the Nation or a P.O.D. song on video, but then all the advertisements that are popping up, they're making billions, and they use P.O.D. or the artist as the vehicle to get them there to the advertisement. It's only fair that you just partner up. If that band, and I know that they get something, but it's lost somewhere in the record deals, it's lost somewhere in contracts. And so, and some of the independent artists, they've really done their homework, and that's why they do stuff independent now, because they have found ways to make money off YouTube, found ways to make money off Spotify. But a lot of us old guys, older school bands that are, on contracts and stuff, we're not deep into that stuff, even to a little bit of our blame, but we're just, all we know how to do is make music. But a lot now bands don't even want to make music because they're like, why? If no one's buying records, what's the deal? So it's.
I mean, I was going to say we haven't got too long left for this show, and I don't want to go too hard on it. But Youth of the Nation, recorded in the 90s. What if someone said to you in the 90s, you're going to carry this thing around, this, sorry, you can't see the camera, but I'm holding up a mobile phone. You're carrying this thing around, and it's just going to be a screen that people touch, and it's going to play music, and your song's going to be on it. Like, that wouldn't be factored into a contract. How is it then fair just to do what, like, how is it fair that it's on there?
It's not. And people are learning as we go, but like guys at us that just, we want to focus so much on the music. We're not in the know of all that stuff. And then so behind the scenes, we are getting, it's sad to say, we are getting screwed by the politics of the game. But at the end of the day, it's like, we just want to concentrate on music and playing live music.
Playing music and concentrating on music, I want to take you back now very quickly before we finish this show to back when you were recording Youth of the Nation, because just via that metric that we've had to use right there and then, it is a huge track. Some bands say that, some of their big tracks, they didn't think it when they were recording it. I just think back to sort of Sweet Child of Mine. Slash didn't like it. Smoke on the Water. That was an additional song. Did you feel that when you wrote this song? Did you feel that this is going to be one of the ones that will grow out from the pack?
No, I don't think we ever say this is the one, because then that kind of does really put you into a single mentality, where you're trying to push that song. I don't think that song could have been written or created more natural. When we were in Santee, which is just an outskirts suburb of San Diego, we were writing the satellite record, and we went out to the store to get some coffee early morning, and we see all the ambulance and the news stations and helicopters, and we're like, something happened. We go inside. In those days, we didn't have our smartphone phones. We had to turn on the news on TV, and as soon as we turn on the news, we see that there's a shooting literally like 2 blocks away at the Santana High School. And so instantly we're watching this devastating moment in time happen, and what do we do? It just puts us in this depression. We're like, what's going on with our kids? Our heart's broken. And that's when Youth of the Nation was created. It was just Marcos playing on the guitar. We had to write music, right? And it was just
Mm.
like, we need to write it. That was one of the songs, like, we need to write a song about what these kids are going through, and these tragedies, and that's where that song was birthed. And so it couldn't have been more natural. And the fact that it's been received around the world as an anthem, and then 20 something years later, it's more relevant now than ever before.
There's so many things that we can talk about off the back of that, but that is the end of week 1 on the Radio Residency. I hope you'll join me again for week 2. We're going to play out now with P.O.D. and Youth of the Nation. It is Primordial Radio. It is week 2 of the Radio Residency this month, and I'm delighted to be joined again by Sonny from P.O.D. Sonny, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. How are you?
I'm very good, and I'm very excited to talk to you about the next track. We're going to first have a listen to it, and then we'll have a chat. This is P.O.D. with Afraid to Die, featuring Tatiana from Jinjer. So that was P.O.D. Afraid to Die, featuring Tatiana from Jinjer. Now, I love that track, and I also love the band Jinjer. How did that collaboration come about?
Well, the Jinjer camp, they're new family to us. We've been fans of their bands for some years now, and her husband, Tatiana's husband, Alex Lopez from Suicide Silence, he's actually been filling in on the drums for us for the last couple years. And so when we did that song, and we wanted a female to join us in the gang chorus, we thought of Tatiana. And so, of course, she's amazing. She's brilliant. She came over and did her part, and it was beautiful. And so she really did make that song.
She's got a stunningly incredible voice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The ability to sort of get throaty and shout and sing is
oh man,
it's fantastic. I love seeing shouty vocalists who can also kind of bring it back as well, and be nice and melodic. And it's just something.
Yeah.
They're a special band.
They are
really special band.
Yeah, huge fans, man.
And moving on to the next track, going to play Linkin Park with One Step Closer. Obviously, a big miss in the music industry now, Chester Bennington. Tell us why you picked this track.
I mean, we love those guys just as human beings. Linkin Park, they came up after us, and I think we took them on their very first tour, and we knew that there was something special about them, and that they were just gonna skyrocket outside this universe. And I just love them as human beings. Good memories with that song. Later on, when they would blow up and be one of the biggest bands, they end up taking us on tour. And to this day, it's probably one of my favorite tours. It was Linkin Park, us, Hoobastank, and Story of the Year, and just so many good memories. And then being able to jump on stage every night with all the singers of the band and sing that with Chester and Mike, it was a beautiful time, man.
And obviously, P.O.D. have always been a band who kind of pushed the envelope a little bit in kind of mixing genres and adding additional elements, especially when you consider metal pre-1990. And I know you said you had other bands at the time like Limp Bizkit and things doing a similar type of thing. Do you feel like Linkin Park maybe did take it an extra little step when they did things like Hybrid, the Hybrid Theory album? Because I always think as well, whenever you do get sort of a new genre forming, someone's always going to mix that with something else. Did you feel Linkin Park were doing that?
I mean, if you listen to P.O.D. stuff all the way back to 92, we've always been rapping. We've always had our punk and reggae influence. We had a DJ, we've done that, but we were more of an underground band. You know what I mean? I think with Linkin Park, when they came out, they had the big deal, and they were radio friendly. They had all the elements, but there was just, you can see as they grew, and they went closer to even more pop music. That was a side of them. I don't think pop music was ever a side of us, and it might be now. I don't know, but they kind of grew into that. But they always had that. They had the elements, the singer and then the rapper. They were heavy at times, very melodic, very hooky. So we knew in watching them that this band is going to do well.
Well, let's have a listen to this right now. This is Linkin Park with One Step Closer. That was System of a Down with Sugar, a band who I really, really love System of a Down. I've been into them since I was a teenager. it's frustrating at the minute because they kind of came out in COVID with 2 new tracks and then they just went away again. And actually, the question I've got for you, you have kept a core of a band together for, 31 years now, or 32 years this year?
Yeah.
How have you made that success? Because that has got to have been, bands like families. Families do have upsets. Families do have, troubles. Some bands, in System's case, have irreconcilable differences, it seems. Like, how have you managed to keep everything together?
Well, we're not experts at that, you know what I mean? But there was 2 records where Marcos, our guitar player, wasn't there. Now we're kind of going through a season with my cousin, the drummer, and so we're, like you said, we're family. So there's ups and downs for sure. I think with us, just as a band, we've always been a working band, so there is no stopping, for us. I think the only time that we did take a break, we had to count the costs and know that this could really, really affect our career. And I think with System, they've had their problems, and then they've taken their breaks, and they've been, for some reason though, they've been able to come back and still be one of the biggest bands ever. And so I think they've just created some kind of mystery. You know what I mean? Like, there's like a mystery of what's going on with that band. And I think Rage Against the Machine is very similar, where they have us all on the edge of our seats, like, what's going on? Or are we finally going to hear some new music? Are they finally going to tour? And there really is a mystery to both of those bands, and it's kept them on top of the world. So at least System didn't break up and then have to go through different members. They are family at the end of the day, but for whatever struggles, they just take a break instead of breaking up. Which could be better in the long run.
Yeah, I just hope we see. I really like the Genocidal Humanoids, and I can't remember the name of the other track, but it just felt, I love hearing bands, as they've developed, and especially the production. I love my production and stuff, and it was really interesting to listen to. But Sugar is also a brilliant track, and I'm glad you
old
picked
school.
Oh yeah, was that from the IEAIAIO album? I can't remember the name, but Steal This Album.
Yeah. No, that was their first. Wasn't it? That was their first record, because I remember hearing that and knowing I'd always heard about System of Down there from Burbank, and they're Armenian and these guys are wild, and I was like, I got to find this band. And I remember getting a tape. I think it was like a tape, and then Rick Rubin was working with them, and we're like, this is huge. You know what I mean? Because I guess in my mind, I thought they were like an underground band, because they were playing in Hollywood and doing their thing. And so when they got their shot, it was like, this is huge. And then when I remember seeing the video, and then once you put the visual to the music, it's like, oh, it's a no-brainer. They all just looked amazing right off the bat,
Yeah, I mean, that album, that track itself was released as a single 24th of May 1998. Yes, from their first ever album.
Crazy.
I do love System of a Down. And a band that I got into in later life, we've already spoken about them. I never quite, and I don't know why, but I never quite got Limp Bizkit until I saw them live. And it was 2014, and it was Sonisphere Festival in the UK, which is like a big old manor house, and they had some huge festivals, I think. And that year it was Metallica headlining and Iron Maiden, and Limp Bizkit played. And I sort of watched it, and within 2 tracks, I completely got it. And I love it. And I've loved Limp Bizkit to this day since then. So that's 10 years ago now. You picked the track Nookie. Obviously, there's a lot of tracks to pick from. Why did you go for this?
I think I felt the same way as you did. I remember hearing their first record and stuff. And then when everybody started comparing us to them, then it was kind of like, I wasn't really feeling it, you know what I mean? And then I think because of all the antics and all the controversy with Fred, that people did overlook the power of that band, you know what I mean? And whatever antic that was for, it's what it is. But I remember seeing Nookie. I was on tour, and it came on MTV, and I remember seeing that song and hearing it and watching the video, and said, this is huge. And to me, that is kind of my defining moment of like the whole new metal, and this is what new metal is going to become, right? A lot more of the hip hop and the street element and the rapping. And I knew that song was going to be huge, but again, those that never really gave Limp Bizkit a shot because of personal feelings or the antics, the controversy stuff behind them. The moment you see them live, it's undeniable. They're powerful. They have a an energy that is undeniable. And I think most bands are just even afraid to play with them or play after them. You know, some of the biggest bands, I've been around the biggest bands, like, we don't want to go after Limp Bizkit. I'm like, why? You're so and so. That doesn't matter. But it's an energy that they bring that's always been that way, you know.
It certainly sucked me in. I really enjoyed it. And let's have a listen now to Limp Bizkit and Nookie. So that was Limp Bizkit here on the Radio Residency with Sonny from the band P.O.D. And we're going a little bit more, I mean, kind of, I don't know if the term contemporary really works. I mean, they've been going since 2001. Stray from the Path. Stray from the Path is kind of right in the middle of that time when there was a lot of bands who were kind of feeling the push towards new metal, if you know what I mean. And you had a lot of sort of like your Machine Heads going and doing the Burning Red and the Supercharger album, and I think know, Metallica moving over doing Saint Anger and kind of trying to join that thing. But Stray from the Path were fresh out from then. I could be wrong, by the way, because I was 9 at the time. So I'm going off like my perceived understanding of history.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about them and tell me about the track Goodnight Alt-Right.
They're actually, I just recently in the last couple of years got into Stray from the Path. You know, being that I'm very old school, I'm very picky when it comes to a lot of the new bands that I listen to. And again, they're not fairly new, but I got turned on to them, and immediately I was like, I like these guys. You know what I mean? They are stuck in that middle where you could tell they have their rage influence, you know, but then I know they're from New York and they have the hardcore influence. And so I guess when I first heard them, I was like, this is genuine. A lot of the bands that I hear coming up, it's like, that's a copycat of this or that. That's, they're trying to be this, they're trying to be that. I just really, and I never even met the guys. I just kind of sense this genuine side of them, that they are who they say they are where they're from. You know, they love the music that they're playing. They're in your face, and they kind of remind me, a lot of us, you know, and back in the 90s, you know what I mean? Just kind of going all out, balls to the wall, let's play some music and have some fun, you know? And then when I heard that song, there's an energy to it. There's an angst to it. It's in your face. It's kind of just what I like in music. You know what I mean? I like being up in your face like that. And so I got to give it up to those guys. I'm definitely a new fan.
Let's do it, and let's play the track now. This is Stray from the Path with Goodnight Alt-Right. That was Deftones, Hole in the Earth. Deftones, I think, if I was to give them the award, you know, there's a lot of bands and there's a lot of great productions, there's a lot of great sounds. Favourite snare drum sound for me has to be Deftones. Just almost... I don't know what it is about the Deftones. And I love Chino Marino's vocals, the guitar work. It's just very, very interesting how they can kind of be quite like ethereal as well as being really heavy. Why have you picked the track Hole in the Earth? Because there's a lot to pick from.
That's all to say. I can pick so many songs from the Deftones. One of my favorite bands all around. But for some reason, Hole in the Earth just has a beauty to it. Every time I could be running or, you know, out and about listening to music and it pops up, and then it always reminds you like, oh, this is such a great song. I love this. All around, there's just a feeling to it. There's a passion to it that is the Deftones. You know, I've heard people say you either like the Deftones or you don't. And I've been a fan ever since, man, into the 90s, watching them play Little Holes in the Wall here in San Diego. You know, our whole band we've loved those guys forever. And so, like you said, I could have picked so many songs, but Hole in the Earth was probably never it was never a single or anything like that. It was just one of those songs that I don't know. There's something moving about it.
Well, moving on from Deftones, we're going to go back because it's the last track of the show, and it's another one from P.O.D. and Boom. Another huge track from P.O.D. Tell us a little bit about this one. What do you remember from, you know, the days back in the studio and writing this song?
It's funny. Not many people know this, but when we were writing this song, it actually kind of same thing as I said with Youth of Nation. We were in the studio writing the satellite record, and it was one of those days where I just think we were all at each other's throats. There was confrontation between, you know, my cousin and Marcos, and there was lots of stuff going on. So that song really, I think, was just created out of this kind of brotherly anger towards each other, and so it just kind of really inspired the lyrics and stuff. But we it just became one of those songs that it's been on sports channels and movies and video games, and again, not ever expecting it to be. It just did. And so I could be watching TV, Monday Night Football, whatever, and all of a sudden you hear boom it playing in the background. So that song has been just we always play that song. It's a great one to play, and we're just glad that people like it.
Quick question: when your kids are watching TV and things, and a song Dad's done comes on, are they proud or are they embarrassed?
No, my kids are super proud. They'll probably most of the time they'll catch it before I do. I could just be oblivious to it, and then all of a sudden they're listening like, "Hey, it's boom!" or "Hey, it's alive!" And then they find it amusing every time. They're still giddy about it, and so am I. I don't take that stuff for granted. I think it's a beautiful thing that people are thinking about us.
Amazing. I like that answer. That's always the better answer.
Yeah.
Right, let's have a listen now. We'll catch you next week. This is P.O.D. with Boom. Primordial Radio, it is Adam here for the third week of April. We're getting closer and closer to the release of an album called Veritas by P.O.D. The singer of the band is sat in front of me. Sonny, are you excited? You must be excited by now to release this.
Oh, more than excited, man. I think there's always a waiting time, after you finish recording, mixing, mastering, that you release a record, but this has got to be the longest that we've waited. So we've been sitting on this a while. I think COVID kind of messed up the whole schedule of everything in the world.
Yeah.
So this record has really been on hold. So that we're just excited for people to finally get to hear it all in its entirety.
Well, let's hear a single from it. This is I Won't Bow Down. That's P.O.D. with I Won't Bow Down. Now, you just mentioned before the track about COVID sort of messing with the schedules and delaying the releases. I know some musicians who they can't deal with that delay because for them, the album is literally only finished when it's kind of prized out of their hands and pushed out to the public. How have you found that time? And obviously it was a different time and writing in a different way, I imagine, during COVID. Mm-hmm. Are you sort of someone as well who will sit and listen to their albums over and over again when it's been mastered and really get into it? Or are you now, you signed it off a while ago?
I mean, I wouldn't say signed it off. It's probably more exciting now that in real time people are getting the chance to hear your songs. But when you're writing and recording, mixing, especially mixing, we've heard the song a million times, each song a million times already. So, it's not that you get over it. You've heard it so many times, and you're excited at that time, but then the waiting process comes, and now we're just excited about other people hearing it. But, for us in real time, we're ready to write some more new songs, but these are new songs because we haven't, been able to play them all. So we get to kind of relive it all over again once we go on tour and start playing these songs live. And so it's a process.
And how into the mixing and stuff do you get? Are you sat at the desk the whole time, or are you kind of waiting for them to send mixes over to you once they're finished?
We used to. Nowadays, we trust, you trust the people that you're with. And sometimes mixers, that's the last thing they want is the band breathing over their shoulders, and so out of respect, we'll send them the stems and the music, and then they'll send it over, and then we just start to make little tweaks after that. It's just, and those first couple songs are probably the hardest, but once they get in a groove and they know what the band is expecting and what we like, it's a wrap. But we are very hands-on when it comes to it. We don't just send everything over and say, hey, now give it to the public. We're very, very picky on a lot of things. And so we're just glad that the mixers and the producers have been very patient with us.
Definitely. And then next band up, Killswitch Engage. I think a band who probably are a little bit more hands-on, because I'm pretty sure Adam is the producer of most of their stuff, at least. I think they've got a lot. I remember they got a lot of Andy Sneap stuff done. And you've picked the track My Curse, which some people love it for its huge searing chorus. Some people love it for the pretty sort of guitar intro. I love it for when that riff hits just after the clean guitar intro, and there's this tiny bit of wah-wah that goes on the guitar. And for some reason, I've always loved that. It's one of my favorite tracks to play on guitar. But people don't care what I think. Why have you picked this one?
Well, I'm a fan of the band, but I think in this season, there was a different vocally. To me, there was a different feeling, and there's just a lot of soul in this song. It's heartfelt. It's passionate. I'm a vocal lyric kind of melody guy, but the music has always been undeniable with Killswitch. They can go in from the prettiest of sound to the most brutal sound, and I love that they can blend it that way. Not every band can do that, and they've maintained true to themselves through all these years. And because they're old school like us too, I don't know. I've always had a heart for these guys.
I always see them as like two bands that I just love.
Yeah,
like the Howard
me
Jones
too.
era and the Jesse era, and they're both brilliant.
Both, yes.
Were they doing a gig? I can't remember if it was just a couple of songs Howard was guesting on, but I don't know how it would work with band politics. I'd love to see sort of a split show, like one half Howard, one half Jesse.
Or just together. Everybody would. When you have those kind of dynamics where you're in love, when a member leaves, but you still, and they come back and you love all the records together because we're fans. We don't know the inner politics with the band, but to us, it's a no-brainer. For me, I think about the era that Marcos wasn't there, our guitar player, and Jason Truby was there. And people say all the time, what if you guys just did it together? And I'm like, well, we got to just kind of work out the dynamics. But to me, it's a no-brainer. I would love to do that. And it doesn't have to be half-hour set or half-hour set. It could be all songs intertwined, and we play them all together, sing them all together.
Definitely. Well, let's have a listen to Killswitch Engage. Prime Howard Jones era. This is My Curse. That was Snot with Stupid. Tell me a little. So, I think a few bands have picked Snot on the Radio Residency. I've never known them too much. So, like, what is it about Snot? Tell me more.
Well, I think they were definitely ahead of their time. You know what I mean? And those of us that were around in that era, we understood the dynamic of Snot and this creativity and this uniqueness of style that was going on, even just vocally, And then when my man passed away, it was way too soon, and so that's why some people might not have heard of them, because they were very underground. I think they probably live on more so in the bands like us, Seven Dust, bands that were around that time, that have the chance to play with them or know them, and it's like, no, this was such a great band. You don't know what you're missing, And so I picked this song mostly just because you can hear the style in that. You can have great singers, and you can have great singers, but sometimes they're lacking in style and uniqueness. And this is one of those bands when you listen to it, you're like, nah, there's creativity there. There is a style that is unlike anybody else, and it was ahead of its time.
I'm going to note down. I'm going to listen to Snot, because I tend to listen mostly when I'm out running, like nowadays.
Yeah. Kind of let the songs play.
Yeah, and I'm going to give it a go, because I'm always, and again, like we spoke about Spotify in show 1, there's like this selection paralysis that there's so much there to choose from at any given time. How do you know what to go for? But when someone speaks about a band like that, I am going to listen, and I'm going to give it a go, and I'm looking forward to it. So some stage tomorrow, I'll be listening to 25 minutes of Snot. I don't think I'm going to do longer. It's been a long week. Coming up next is Glassjaw. Tell me a little bit about Glassjaw. Why have you picked this band?
I mean, as you can tell, all these bands that I picked, they're not it's not all just heavy music. A lot of it is more just for style and uniqueness. Glassjaw being out of New York, I mean, I'm a huge, I just always respected the New York scene and the hardcore scene. And you can tell, at least I can tell, who they're influenced by, and then I can tell the bands who are influenced by them. And again, just because their style is unique, they're doing their own thing, unapologetically, they're doing their own thing. I love that they're from New York. I just, the first time I seen them play live, I think it was Ozfest 2002, playing the side stage, and just murdered it. And I just recently went and seen their 30th anniversary show up here in LA, and they're still killing it, man. And so mostly again, not because they're a mainstream band, it's more because they've maintained that underground credibility and just that they have all my respect, man. I love Glassjaw.
Let's have a listen now. This is Glassjaw with Moo Empire. That was Glassjaw here on Primordial Radio. It's the Radio Residency. We've got a few more tracks on this show. I'm joined by Sonny from the band. You're just about to play some Downset with Eyes Shut Tight, but we were talking earlier on the show about looking forward to getting out on the road and playing some of the new music out there. Obviously, you finished up a UK tour, but you're going to be doing an extensive US tour. How do you prepare? How do you get ready for, you know, extensive periods on the road? Because it's, especially the size of the US, it's not quite like the UK where you can just, you know, go back if you want a free weekend.
Yeah, no. We'll get our practice in. We'll set everything up, and then this is old hat to us. You know what I mean? It's just part of who we are, the touring life, and then we'll get going. And so we're looking forward to the US run, and then we look forward to going back right after that over to Europe and playing the festivals and headline shows. So we're staying busy, man. We're just grateful that we're playing again.
And you got some great shows in in Europe as well. Some huge festivals and some lovely, basically places I think most people would like to go and visit in June, which is always quite pleasant. It'll be a nice summer in Europe. Tell us a little bit about the band Downset. You've chosen the track Eyes Shut Tight.
Yeah. Downset is definitely one of those underground bands, you know. Unfortunately, with music, you know, most people only know, or they're more familiar with the popular bands, you know, the bands that have gotten the most exposure. You know, Downset is one of those original bands that came up the same time P.O.D. We knew of Downset, you know, back then because we were playing the hardcore shows. We knew they were from LA, which is 2 hours up from us. You know, they were genuine. They were genuine as far as being, you know, from the hip hop scene, from the graffiti scene, the street scene, and so we're very alike. You know, but then when bands came out and were a little bit more popular, like Rage Against the Machine, Limp Bizkit, you tend to forget those bands that originated and started. You know, and I feel like even with P.O.D, you know, it was always like, oh, you guys remind me of Limp Bizkit. You guys remind me of Rage Against the Machine. And it's like, but when you do your homework, P.O.D has been doing this since '92. You know, we were underground for 7-8 years before we even decided to come up and shop for major labels and do anything that was mainstream. And Downset has been, you know, killing it in the underground for years. So they're one of the OGs of this music.
And they're still going. I just had a quick Wikipedia just to make sure, and they are still going. They had a bit of a break from 2009 to 2013. Cast your mind back then to 1992. Obviously, you had all of these underground bands. Was there any one that maybe went away quite quickly that you would have bet on at the time that they were going to be, you know, well, you know, have the musical career that you guys have had? I mean,
bro, I can't even tell you. There's too many, and that's kind of the problem, is that you have these amazing bands start, and you know, when we're young and we're punk rock, we're ready to jump in a van and sleep in parking lots, and we've all done that. You know, not a lot of your favorite bands have done that, but there is us who've done it, right? We lived this. This was lifestyle. But after, you know, 7, 8, 9 years, 10 years of just grinding and grinding and grinding, a lot of these guys, you know, or us, we get older. It's like, well, I really do want to get married to my girl. You know, I really do want to have kids, and you really end up settling and saying, I have to go and get my 9 to 5. You know, and then there's those bands that got lucky. I mean, same thing with P.O.D. We were grinding and grinding. And if we didn't have that little bit stint of success, we still wouldn't have been doing this. I can't be my age and grinding in a van and trailer, you know, selling merch, you know what I mean? Like, but a lot of bands had to call it short because, you know, maybe they just saw it as a season in their life and they had to move on to the next chapter of life.
I guess fans probably see, you know, they go to a gig and they're having a great fun night and they think that every night is a great fun night, and they sometimes don't necessarily see what's going on behind the scenes. I mean, I had a very limited peek behind the curtain. I was a sound engineer for a band for a while, and we were sort of van size, you know, touring in touring in a splitter van. Most nights we'd sleep in the van, and I lasted about 2.5 years, and I lost my rag one night because it was -5. We were in Switzerland, sleeping in the back of the van, and I was just so cold it broke me.
Yeah.
I basically said the next night, I was like, all right, I'm going to use whatever money I have, which I was touring with the band, it wasn't a lot. I'm going to get a hotel, and that ended up being my last tour. And it's, you know, I'm not alone in that, and I'm sure people in bands do. It is tough, like, and it's difficult, I think, for fans to see it because they love the music.
Yeah, and the bands love the music, and I guess this would be kind of their sacrifice to the art, you know, that they put as much time as they possibly could, you know. And there is, obviously, you love the music, but there is a hope and a dream of like, I want to do this forever. I want my music career to sustain me financially, but you know, that's only a small percentage, you know. And even P.O.D, as much success that we've had, and we've been on the biggest of tours, we are a blue collar working band. And now, we talked about this before, people aren't buying records. We have to tour. You would think 32 years later, we would be able to take it easy and be very selective. I feel like now we're grinding just as hard as we were when we were, you know, late teenagers, early young men. And so that's how you get paid. And so that's why I brought it up on the previous show, that hopefully they can figure out some way to get these bands paid for their art, that they deserve it, because this is how we pay our bills, you know, and we can't tour 13 months out of the year forever.
And added to that, I hope that, you know, there stops all these stupid levies that get put on people buying tickets. You know, in the UK, there's a big problem at the minute, and you know, you then go to a gig and suddenly, as you say, like it's touring and it's merch, and then you're told, oh, if you want to sell merch here, it's 30% charge. You know, that sort of thing
man.
You know, it's just everyone trying to take their slice of the pie, and then at some point there'll be no pie for anyone.
Yes, and that's the frustrating part, is that everybody's making money except for these working class artists, and then at some point they say, as much as I love this music game, that's it. You know, it's run its course because everybody's getting more of the pie other than the artist.
Exactly. Well, let's move on. Let's have a listen to this. This is Downset with Eyes Shut Tight. That was Bad Brains, Eye Against Eye. Do love a bit of Bad Brains, but why did you pick that one exactly?
I mean, I think the Bad Brains will probably be always the band that I mentioned is one of my biggest influences, one of my favorites, you know, as underground as they were. That's why I love them. You know, they're what started me into my punk rock and hardcore journey, you know, back in the day. You know, I grew up in a rock family, but I tended, you know, to kind of listen to more reggae music and hip hop because it was a street, you know, it was a cultured music. For me, punk rock was, you know, like the Sex Pistols from England. And it's like, how do I relate to that? I can't relate to Englishmen. You know what I mean? I like their style, but that's not where I'm from. You know, it wasn't until I saw or heard of, you know, Suicidal Tendencies. Like, hey, do you know there's some Mexican guys from Venice Beach and they're in a punk band? You know, there's Bad Brains, 4 black guys from DC and they're in a punk band. I'm like, punk? Isn't that like an English kind of, you know?
Singing about the Queen and everything, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Until you dive in, and then you're like, what do these guys know that I don't know? Obviously, they're men and women of color, and you're like, no, they've tapped into something that I'm not familiar with. So it makes you want to know, and then you're diving into their music. You're like, oh my gosh, this is a whole nother culture. This is a whole nother world that I got lost in, you know? And so Bad Brains for me will always be kind of our uncles and the pioneers of punk rock music. And they're they're probably one of my favorite bands of all time.
And just help me understand a little bit, like, how fresh was the idea of, because it seemed to be from, again, I was born in 1992, okay, just straight out the bat. So obviously I wasn't around and I didn't quite understand what was going on. But it seems to be, as you started, you know, rap and rock wasn't really a thing at all. How brave was it to get that going? And how it's the same as, you know, when Hendrix started doing some of the things that he was doing on a guitar. I imagine, like, it was just innovative and different. And to be an innovator, like, what clicked in your head to think we should do this, we should try it, we should give it a go?
I think it was really a no-brainer because it was authentic. Where we come from in our street, in our neighborhood, we are hip hop heads. We are punk rockers. We are hardcore. We are metal. We are all these things. And so because we love all these things, it was more natural to just kind of let's just push it all together. It's the things that we love. It wasn't so contrived, and it was we just did it, and it was authentic, and we like what we like, so we play it. I think the problem is as the more popular it got, when you started to see bands do it, it wasn't genuine anymore, and you know what I mean? Because they didn't live that lifestyle. They weren't into hip hop. They weren't into reggae music. They weren't into punk. All of a sudden they came from a completely different genre to now they're wearing the street clothes and they're looking the part, and it wasn't them. And then I think a lot of people fans saw through that, and I think that's a lot why maybe they jumped out of that new metal scene too quick, because it really is a great genre. It really is a season of time in music that I miss. But I think I don't know, maybe it was too much at that point in time, and then they just, as fans do, they go on to the next trendy thing. And so I'm glad that it's getting its time in the sun again.
Yeah, definitely. And like all of the stuff from your new album, and just to mention that again, Veritas is coming out next month, May. It sounds fresh and it sounds exciting, and
Thanks, man.
I've loved all the singles that I've heard so far. But we're going to go back for the final track, and I know we're short on time, so I'm just going to ask you a very quick question about Alive, P.O.D. Another huge one. There's always the Chris Lord Alge mixes on this. You see, like, they pop up in places. Was he the original mixer of the album?
No, I think for that record we were actually using Randy Staub, who was known for his AC/DC stuff. He was just an old school guy, and I think by the time he mixed that song, we loved it. But we had worked with Chris Lord Alge on the Fundamental record, but he was kind of way out of our league. He was at the time he was very polished. He wasn't as known as he is now. And back then, I think we just Alive originally had this rock and roll, this deep, heavy sound, and I think at that time we knew like we needed something a little bit more easy listening, and so we threw it back. We threw it back to Chris Lord Alge. We had to fork over the money because he was he cost a lot more. But then once we heard that, we knew, and then ever since Alive, and then after that it was like Howard Benson and Chris Lord Alge were the producing mixing team, and then they did everybody after that because people were expecting a certain sound that those two created.
I had Benji from Skindred and the Residency talking glowingly about Howard Benson. I think he did a track with Howard Benson, and it was the guys from Sepultura. I think he got flown over and worked with Howard Benson. But I just know Chris Lord Alge is like this. When I started doing music production in college, when I was like 16, 17, we had his plugins, it was the Chris Lord Alge sound plugins and all of that. So a little bit of a superstar in so many worlds. Right, really enjoyed the show. We're going to be back next week for one last one. But before that, here's P.O.D. with Alive. It is show 4 of the radio residencies in April, and for the fourth and final time, I'm joined by Sonny from P.O.D. How are you doing?
Good, man. Glad to be here.
Do you like it that you get called P.O.D., or would you rather people were saying Payable on Death? I'd always wondered that with a band that's like got a very big acronymed name.
We started as Payable on Death, you know what I mean? And because it sounded tough, it had meaning behind it. But I think after a while, you just get tired of saying it. And then I think for some reason, we just went with P.O.D. It looked cool on flyers, and it just kind of stuck with us, We stayed with it.
If it works, it works. And the next track is from your forthcoming album, Veritas. We'll have a listen and we'll chat about it in a second. This is Lies We Tell Ourselves. That was P.O.D. with Lies We Tell Ourselves. Again, forthcoming album. It is so close, we can almost taste it. It's very exciting. Tell us about that track in particular. What went on in the writing of that?
That's definitely, if you listen to all the singles released so far, they have their own sound to it. You know what I mean? From Drop to Afraid to Die, I Won't Bow Down. This song is more. It's not as heavy. You know what I mean? It's those tracks, but it's got meaning behind it. I think this is one of those songs that actually did start with a chorus hook, and we kind of worked a way around it. But again, I think the song just has to do with those voices in our head. You know what I mean? Everybody's going through it and believing the lies that are out there, and it really is just about being true to yourself and discovering that truth and being able to move forward with life.
That's a good message. I mean, we call it. We have a lot of things here nowadays spoken about imposter syndrome. And we all get that. And it's weird how almost everything like that. You could be doing a job and you could be sitting in your job really scared about what's going on because you feel like you don't belong and you don't feel right. And it's all a self-creation, and it's bizarre, isn't it? It is bizarre. And I think it's also something that mental health is being brought up more and more nowadays, and we cover it lots here on Primordial Radio, and it's really good to have positive messages coming out in heavy music as well.
Thanks.
I guess there's probably a point in the time, and I don't think P.O.D have gone through this, talking about Youth of the Nation and things. You've always been a thoughtful band, reflecting on problems, but I think we've definitely got away from a little bit of the over masculinity side, if you know what I mean.
I see that a lot, and that's a good thing. That's one thing I do pride ourselves on P.O.D is that we've always tried to put forth a positive message, and not just be the stereotypical rock metal kind of vibe. But I see that a lot more in metal and rock and roll music. Being aware of mental illness, being aware of things that are going on, around us, and being a lot more empathetic and sensitive to human issues than just saying this is the way it is and that's it. So it's a good thing to see.
It's a good thing to hear as well, good thing to hear from, just in the music. But moving on, another one of your contemporaries, Papa Roach and Last Resort. I mean, this is a huge track in itself as well. Yeah, it is classic. Like you hear Papa Roach and this is probably the first song you go for, I guess. What was it? What are your memories of this track? Why have you gone for this one over just the nature of it?
Yeah. Well, Papa Roach is from North California. We're from South California, so we never really crossed paths when it came to playing in the scene and stuff like that. But I want to say the first time we heard of them was Marco Siega, who did our Southtown video. He was going to do a Papa Roach video, and it was going to be Last Resort. So he was kind of telling us about these guys, and then eventually we would meet them, play with them, hear them. But even when we saw that video, it's very similar to a Southtown video because Marco Siega did them both. But then it was like, oh no, we're the same. We love hip hop music, we love rap, we love heavy. We're blending it all together. They were just kind of the North California version, and so we've always been fans. But this song is a classic. To me, is classic, old school Papa Roach.
It's odd that it's one of those songs as well that I think you could play in any. It's got so much into like popular culture. You see people playing it at weddings and stuff. They've got like George Michael, some Wham, things like that. Then a bit of Papa Roach, and it kind of fits in. It's weird how that happens.
It is weird, and they're very, very lucky when songs can do that. But I think it just has because of the nostalgia and the memories, And we happen to be those older bands now where kids are getting married, you know what I mean? Or they are having experiences in life and they're like, oh, this song fits no matter what. People play P.O.D songs, at weddings, funerals, parties. It all fits.
I mean, it's music at the end of the day, and most of it is just fun. I think the worst thing with music is people who have like guilty pleasures or decide that, I can't listen to that because it's a different genre. No, just enjoy it.
I hate that. Yeah.
Right, we're going to listen to this now, Papa Roach and Last Resort. That was Seven Dust with Denial, a band you've spoken about quite a lot. Huge songs from Seven Dust. Like they're kind of pop metal rock, if you know what I mean. Not pop, but because they're heavy, but they're easy to like and they are popular. Again, though, a band that I'm not sure if quite hit the UK as much as the US. So tell me a little bit more about them.
I would say definitely not pop, but I think what you're describing is
it's popular, not pop music.
Yes, but the easy listening of the vocals. The music is heavy, but all of a sudden you have this kind of beautiful vocal streaming over the top, and again, there's just so much soul, being that these are some down south boys, these guys are probably definitely some of the sweetest gentlemen in rock and roll. They're the gentlemen of rock and roll. We love them. And just like Papa Roach and Last Resort, this was kind of that era when this music was hitting, and it was like there was so much style and so much diversity, and everybody sounded like themselves. At this era, I was like, oh, that's Seven Dust from down in Georgia. Oh, it's Papa Roach from NorCal. Oh, it's P.O.D. from SoCal. There's from New York. All these different bands that were doing their thing, and Seven Dust has always maintained their authenticity, their genuineness, and they're just some of the sweetest guys, like I said, in rock and roll.
And we're going to move on to a band now who I think quite different. The Mars Volta, quite a chaotic band. I'm a massive Queens of the Stone Age fan, and I think their drummer that was in the Mars Volta, and that's kind of what led me into listening to them. So I don't know tons and tons about them. Where do they? I mean, just from what I do know, they kind of feel like they sit out on the edge of some of the tracks we played in these shows. Tell me a little bit about this one.
Well, just because I'm a huge At the Drive-In fan, and so I always known, and then these are the two front guys that went off to do Mars Volta, where the rest of the band went off and did Sparta, and so just following both sides. I was such a season where I was at the Drive-In, and so when the two guys broke off and did Mars Volta, it just, because I loved them so much, it was like it forced you to listen to it, and they are very eclectic. They're that kind of band, if you know what I mean, where everybody loves them just because their style, who they are, unapologetic for what they do, and they're genuine in it all. But this is probably one of the most maybe played or popular songs of Mars Volta.
Well, let's have a listen now. This is, and I'm going to hopefully not mess up the name, this is Inertiatic ESP.
Yeah.
That was Mars Volta with Inertiatic ESP, and I've been thinking of something recently, and I'm really glad that you've picked the next song and the next band, because it's a question that I'd like to ask, especially from a genre that you're so familiar with. You've said so many similarities to P.O.D. and the bands that you sort of came up at the same time as, and Rage Against the Machine is a band that you've mentioned. I don't know how a new Rage Against the Machine would be like welcome today. I don't know what it's like in the US, and I know that now with social media, politics is something that's almost discussed. Well, it's a constant discussion, and in the UK there's the horrible sort of line of, say you're a footballer and you've got a political opinion, stick to football, we'll do the politics and all of that. Now that's obviously what people would be saying to Rage Against the Machine nowadays. I just think the anger and the protest movements of sort of bands like Rage Against the Machine, we need more of them nowadays. Do you think there is a gaping hole for that kind of angry, politically charged music?
No, I mean, if you search, there are the bands that come from our era that, like we said, whatever your stance is or whatever you believe in, this was the music to scream it. That's what, to me, the hardcore and the punk movement is and was. Even to the new generation, it's more of those who believe in something. Rage Against the Machine have always been that way. I think for us, we've tried to steer away from politics just because I believe our overall message has always been that of love and of hope. And so we never wanted to have such a stance on one side that we were excluding the other. You know what I mean? We've always tried to stay very universal and try to meet at hope, at love, humanity, peace, where Rage is like, this is what we believe in. Don't care what you think. Even though I still feel that way because that angst is in me because I lean towards the side of hope and love. I have to stay very neutral in a lot of things just for conversation's sake, just for, just to be relatable. You know what I mean? So, but that is the side that I love with Rage Against the Machine, that they're all about it. But
then as well, and this is where I was having a long conversation with my wife in the car about this yesterday, and where I kind of fell down on the opinion was actually, isn't it great to have music that people can enjoy as well, that isn't politically charged, but could bring people from say the left wing and the right wing together, and they've got something to unite on, and then maybe discussions, maybe they can influence each other's opinions in different ways, as opposed to sometimes segregating an entire audience not based on their musical thoughts but based on their political thoughts. Do you feel like maybe that's more what P.O.D do?
We're very aware of that. I mean, we have done stuff in our earlier days where it might have separated people and not to be able to have a discussion. And I don't want to be so punk rock minded and hardcore minded that we cannot have a discussion, because that's what art, that's what in life in general, we should be open to those things. I'll never forget playing a show, and I don't know if you remember that band Far, and this was underground, and we did have a political kind of issue song that we don't even play anymore. And I remember he was so heated, we walked outside, and I was surprised that he actually jumped in my face, because I would have just smashed him. If reflex alone, I would have just smashed him. But he said, "You know what? I don't believe," and he went off. And then I just listened to him, and then he said, "But I respect it, and I respect you for saying it." And ever since then, it changed my outlook on music. Yes, this is what it's supposed to be. We can both be on the same stage. You can scream blue, I can scream yellow. And at the end of the day, it's music, and we both have the right to say it. Now, I guess the beauty would be that we could actually have a discussion afterwards. But, come on, let's grab some coffee. Let's grab a beer. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean?
I think nowadays it's tough as well, because people tend to have conversations not in front of a coffee or a beer. They're hidden behind a screen, and they feel they can say what they want, and they can, act tough. And that isn't good. But
I hate that.
Me too. But let's listen to this. It's something I definitely do not hate, and that is Rage Against the Machine and Freedom. Incubus with New Skin, another brilliant band, Incubus. Have you got any particular stories, memories, anything about Incubus?
Just touring with those guys. I want to say, I think that was Ozfest 2000. I believe we were both on the main stage. So just being around those guys, Southern California guys. So we kind of have the same interests and vibe. But again, more of an eclectic band. These excellent musicians. I chose this record just because that was more of their earlier stuff, and there are a lot more. I don't know if you say heavier songs, but they definitely had a very Primus influence, and because they're so good at their instruments, there's a lot going on. And so I've been a fan of these guys since way back then.
I'm still sad no one's ever picked Primus on the radio residency, because
I was gonna pick.
What song were you gonna go for? And I think actually we will play it after the show, just if I can get an excuse.
Oh, see, now you're putting me on the spot. I would. Oh, great. What is it? Is it Mud? Is it My Name is Mud? Is that
My Name is Mud?
That's probably one of the most popular. That's probably one of the most popular. I would do that.
Cool. Primus, My Name is Mud.
Familiar.
Come up soon. I've been really listening to Les Claypool. He did an album with John Lennon's son. He's done a couple of them. The Lennon Claypool Delirium, and I've listened to them recently, and I just love the way that guy plays the bass guitar.
Genius, yeah.
Kind of like the mad scientist type genius, I think. It's just because it's just so, yeah. Anyway, we were meant to be talking about Incubus, so I'm really sorry about that. Always love a bit of Primus chat too. But it is time to say goodbye, because it's the end of the radio residencies for April. It's been great having you here, and I'm so excited.
Thank you, brother.
So excited about your new album coming out in May, Veritas. I'm going to put you on the spot again. I want one sentence to get people on your website, on Mascot Records, on Amazon. Why should they order Veritas?
Why should they order it? Oh, I would just say we have a history in this music game, and we're lovers of this game. And if you've never heard P.O.D. before, do your homework, and you can start with this record and go backwards.
Brilliant. I can promise you, people at Primordial do know P.O.D. because we've been
awesome.
playing all of your singles and all of the back catalogue for a long, long time. We're going to leave now with one of your tracks. You mentioned it earlier, actually. You had a music video about Southtown, or the song Southtown. Here is the track. Sonny, thank you so much.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Primordial. Radio.